I think I am by nature a generous reader, in the sense that I very seldom throw books across the room. I finish 90% of books, even if I feel that they are seriously flawed, because I do feel that there are often subtle qualities to be found in novels, if you look for them, and that if they are there, then they have value as as an addition to the literary canon, as it were. Now, of course, the sort of the punchline to this setup would be, and this novel has no qualities. It has been long-listed, then shortlisted for the Booker Prize. That's not the case. This novel has a quality, I'm just not sure what it is. It's a very odd book. It's very much about voice. It's a first-person narrative. It is written in a kind of attempt at sort of a kind of personal view of one's feelings of self. And in this book, it's very much about self-esteem and lack of thereof. It's got a sort of kind of really odd but not unusual narrative structure. It is told by a woman 50 years after the event, and we get sort of insights into her life in those 50 years in between, but mostly, essentially, it is told over 5 or 6 days of a Christmas period in the early 60s. It's an odd one, because if one was to read the quote by the Times, which says a taut psychological thriller ripped with comedy as black as a raven's wing, well, it's not taut. The writing has a sort of looseness, and actually I think a sort of flabbiness, that doesn't in any way suggest that it has a kind of, that it's been kind of ratcheted up for kind of pace and a sense of jeopardy in us. It's not psychological. It is very deeply internal, but that's something different. And is it a thriller? No. Thrillers tend to be very plot-based, and each plot moment turns us, so we're not sure what's going on, and provides, one would hope, thrills. Whereas this actually is very story-based, and the difference between story and plot is quite subtle, but it's meaningful. And here, the world of the protagonist is unfolded in her prose at a fairly modest pace. There aren't any twists and turns. They are events essentially one after the other, and then there hits a moment in the last 30 pages where, had it been about actually those last 30 pages, it would have been a thriller. But it's not about those last 30 pages, and in fact those last 30 pages in many ways are pointless. It's almost as though she's thought, now I need for this novel to do something. Whereas actually it does quite a lot of things early on in terms of the relationship between a 24-year-old woman and her job and her father and her dead mother, and her work colleagues and the inmates. That's actually enough for a literary novel, well told, well written. But she decides it needs more than that, and I think that's the kind of insight here, is she doesn't have the confidence that she can write a novel that doesn't require some huge genre moment to kind of pay off the kind of ramblings and it's, I wouldn't say it's anyway enjoyable being in the mind of this woman, but it is an interesting and fascinating and slightly disturbing place to be. And once again, like Mother's Milk, like My Name is Lucy, this is very much about family dysfunction and a mother and to a certain degree a father. The mother's much more absent because she's dead, but who was incapable of love. But they're just, for me, the writing just isn't good enough. I would read bits out, but I'm not. It spends its whole time reminding us that we're in the mind of this woman. That she, rather than, having the confidence to essentially say, I can write in a voice that says you are in the mind of this person. It doesn't, and that's one of those odd things about first person is, are we actually just in the mind of this person as they're thinking over what happened, or have they written down their life story or whatever have you? And it's often never made clear, and sometimes it is. And but here it's neither. It's not. This is just my voice, as though you're in my head or I'm in your head. It's because we always have she's thought, oh God, it's just so. It's such an attempt at being writerly, I guess. But anyway, I'm afraid, as much as I enjoyed it, I suppose, apart from the last 30 pages, which I felt were contrived and required a ridiculous plot point that we hadn't been managed so it made sense. I mean, we etc. etc. So I've just flown back from 2 days in Mumbai, so I'm feeling a little fried. It shouldn't have been on the long list, although it's probably added something. It so shouldn't be on the short list, and it would be a travesty if it won. Thank you.